We're talking about distributed Scrum implementation. The first thing you need to think about in distributed Scrum is what the Microsoft Process Group did. How does it actually work in practice? And when Microsoft looked at all the distributed work they were doing, they found in every case, distribution reduced the probability of success, increased the delivery time, and reduces the team's performance and increasing dysfunction. So they said at Microsoft, we have to have a business case that overwhelms these impediments to distributed work. So for many people, they think that you can save money by doing distribution. I work with a venture capital firm. We have almost $1 billion invested in many, many companies. We want them all doing Scrum. They're all distributed. We find that the only way that we can get actually reduced cost distributed is to set up the Scrum very carefully, which is what I'm going to talk about. So let's talk about the first distributed Scrum that actually worked in the sense that they could take local velocity, a high-performing local team, and they could distribute that velocity and performance across the globe. There's a paper published in the IEEE library on distributed Scrum, and it's about a company called initially Dynex, acquired by Cersei Dynex. They were a library system company with more than 12,000 library systems installed in 42 countries. They wanted to upgrade their technology to the latest web infrastructure. It was going to take over 1 million lines of Java code. They began working for about 2 years in the United States, and were not going fast enough. They had to distribute. The CEO of Dynex went around the world visiting companies, trying to find Scrum teams that could perform as well or better as the US Scrum teams. He could only find teams that could do that where the employment was stable. The teams could be stable for extended periods. And he found that mainly in Eastern Europe and Russia, and selected the best teams in St. Petersburg, Russia, doubled his team size, and immediately more than doubled the output of the teams. So these teams were set up, in this case, half in the United States and half in Russia, every team. And at the time, their technology was limited. But at the end of the day, we measured in function points their delivery capability, and their delivery capability was almost the same globally as a case study with a six-person co-located Scrum team, demonstrating that you can distribute velocity. But the challenge is, how do you set it up so that you can do that repeatedly? So we then I looked around the world for organizations that could try doing this again and be able to repeat it. I wanted to run it just like a clinical study. I used to be in medicine. We want to set up a model. We want to establish that model and repeatedly implement that model and show that velocity can be distributed, the quality can be distributed, that the team size could scale up distributed, and everything would work. We did that, and we found there was some really important things that needed to happen, that the people needed to be brought together initially, work together. In this case, for this study, it was a study in Amsterdam where some Dutch developers were brought together with Indian developers in Amsterdam. They established a way of working and a velocity, and only when the Scrum was working well did they distribute it. Then they made sure there were same tools and technologies remotely and locally, and ran this model, and were able to achieve the same results as the Cersei Dynex project. So understanding how to distribute Scrum it's a really good idea to read these two papers on how it works. So today, I'm in a Scrum team myself that's distributed, and I meet every day when I'm not traveling and not teaching, and I can get into the daily meeting. I'm meeting every day in the daily meeting. We do weekly sprints. I'm meeting every Wednesday, going through sprint planning, retrospective. Whenever I'm available, we do swarming online. And using these techniques, particularly video communication, we can get very high performance in a distributed environment. So the bottom line is that it's possible to get good distributed teams where you could distribute velocity, distribute quality of production, but only if you bring the teams together and get them agreeing on how they're going to work together. And then when they separate, they have the same tools and technologies remotely as locally, and they're meeting by video, doing all the Scrum events, the daily meeting, the sprint planning, the sprint review, by video, face-to-face. This way of working can produce really high-performing distributed Scrum teams.